Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. Happy Monday, everyone, and happy new showtime. 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time launches today for Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're excited about that change. Hopefully, you guys who have been with us in the chat can still make it at this time, but nevertheless, we're excited to have you guys here. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button to All Access AM on YouTube. We drop the QR code here if you're watching. Wherever you are, whether that be already on YouTube or on Twitter or wherever you catch us at, hit that QR code for us in the corner of the screen and it'll take you to our YouTube page where you could subscribe and help us out as we grow this channel covering all things ACC. Also want to remind you guys that we are presented on Mondays by our friends at Security National Bank. And Security National Bank is one of the top banks that you should be reaching out to again, take a look at kind of your setup and see if it continues to work for you or if it's time to make a change. Because in today's day and age of banking, you need a little bit more personal attention. And a bank like Security National Bank, with its family values and how they still manage to grow and continue to stretch what they can do for you, they still have that same family feel to the bank that has been in business now for decades across the country. So we appreciate their support of the show. Make sure you go to securitynational.bank for more information on how they can help you. We've got a fun show for you guys this morning as we are going to have EJ Holland of Kane Sport join us at 8:30 a.m. Central Time to talk a little bit about Miami's recruiting efforts in the high school ranks and the transfer portal to retool this Miami roster and go ahead and push for another national championship push this upcoming season. They, of course, went out and grabbed Darian Mensah out of the transfer portal from Duke at quarterback. We'll get into all that with EJ Holland. He is new on the Miami beat, but one of my longtime friends in the industry. He actually gave me my start. So EJ Holland heads over to the Miami beat just in the last few weeks, and we're excited to have him on sharing everything with you guys on the Canes front. So we kind of looked at the Florida State side of this last week with Matt Lasser, breaking that down. Looked at it with David Cunningham on the Virginia Tech side. Now excited to get EJ Holland on to join us here in about 25 minutes. So appreciate you guys for tuning in with us. We are going to spend a good bit of the early portion of the show talking about ACC hoops. We'll get into a big coaching change across the ACC. SMU defensive coordinator Scott Simons is heading off to the NFL. So that's another one of those college to NFL coaching changes that has happened. And we'll break down a little bit of that for you guys. And I'll share my thoughts. Before we do get into ACC hoops, though, the ACC did finalize which teams will be only playing 8 league games from 2027 to 2032. And so this has been announced on, well, it hasn't, I don't know if it's been announced, but On3 broke the news, Brett McMurphy, that the ACC is going to have, teams that are only going to play 8 games. And it's not every team. It's sometimes multiple teams over this 2026 to, or should I say 2027 to 2020 to 2032 range. But here are the teams that are going to play 8 games. Clemson next season and in 2028, Georgia Tech in 2029 and 2031, Syracuse in 2030, and Florida State in 2032. So in 2026, it's going to be 5 schools: Boston College, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia Tech, and North Carolina. And that is, bridging that gap to the 9-game league schedule that I feel like is going to help the overall conference get through these tiebreaker situations a little bit more. I think that's one of the reasons why you heard so much about it this year, obviously with the ACC only playing 8 games and then the tiebreaker going the way it did. It's still a league that now that is moving to 9 games per team for conference play. You're going to see some of that figured out a little bit better for the most part with head-to-heads and things like that, and the natural ability to play one more team on that ACC schedule. This should help them in a big way. And this group is moving forward in the right direction, I think, as a whole, as a conference. The quote from the Brett McMurphy article when it came to the ways to get this 9-game schedule with 17 teams pushed through is we have the highest rated academic schools of any Power Four conference. We'll figure it out. And you're seeing this group kind of double down on, pushing the league in the right direction, especially headed towards that kind of 2030 to 2032 mark where there's going to be some TV deals up and things like that. This is a concerted effort for the league and the member institutions to push us in the right direction. So it's weird. It's not perfect. But the most important thing is that this league got to 9 games so that some of that tiebreaker mess could be resolved as a whole. So kudos to the ACC for getting that out there early and figuring it out, on the bright side of things. So look, we've got a lot to get to on All Access AM this morning. Appreciate you guys being here with us. Let's jump into hoops, though, and we have a wild slate from this weekend to get to. A lot of things going on in the league. We had 2 out-of-conference games to get to as well, Louisville, Baylor, and Virginia, Ohio State as well. So we have a lot to break down on this show. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway is, seeing this Clemson Duke game, obviously get kind of some of the seeding in a sense resolved in this league as far as what's going to happen with the top of the league with Clemson and Duke, sharing the top going into this weekend. And now we see, Duke having that clear-cut advantage. Clemson now sitting at 10-3. They're 2 games back. UVA sitting 1.5 games back. I think watching Duke, this one was really just kind of impressive. And obviously you're at home. You get the win 67-54 over Clemson, but this was an early dogfight, and Duke was able to kind of do what it's done in other good matchups over the course of this season, is kind of not, for the most part, and North Carolina, obviously they had that late collapse, but you didn't see them go through this game and really kill themselves. They just kind of worked like a boa constrictor in a sense, and were able to get that win, which was obviously critical. But Cam Boozer, another 18 points, led the team with 8 rebounds. Carter Welling for Clemson led the way with 12 on their side of things. But I think we just saw Duke continue to play Duke basketball and not let that North Carolina loss seep into some of these other high-profile games. Duke just pulled away in the second half to get this one done, and just too powerful, too talented in a sense. And we saw that in Cameron Indoor unfold on Saturday and in the leadoff game. I mean, that was 11 a.m. for us here in Texas, bright and early, so to speak. But that was a really good game. I thought both teams, showed that, they are 2 of the best in the ACC, and one of them in particular being the best for a reason. And it was competitive the whole way, but just Duke, just too much. They're able to get that one and cement themselves, in a sense, at the top of the league going down the stretch here, as really only a few more weekends to go. Sitting down and looking at the schedules, 6 games for most teams. Big Monday night matchup now for Duke facing Syracuse. They're at home once again, and Syracuse is feeling themselves coming off of a win over SMU at home, 79-78. Q's, just offensively getting that jolt from Kai and Anthony. You've got to, if you're Duke, you get them down and get them out early. SMU kind of let them hang around a little bit and just never shut that door. They had 2 12-point leads on Saturday, and really the offense just dried up. It dried up late in that game. SMU had held Syracuse without a basket for, it seemed like, almost 4 minutes, and their final shot, their layup, Nate Kings made it, and just they were able to obviously not have to worry about a half-court shot from SMU, and Syracuse was able to get a much-needed win for that program. Adrian Autry is still in a bad situation there right now, just with everybody, I think, circling the wagons on the coaching carousel. Jerome Tang getting fired. I think now some of these coaches that don't perform down the stretch, that are already very, very much on the hot seat, maybe we'll see some moves made. But Adrian Autry was able to avoid that with a win over SMU. on Saturday in the Carrier Dome. And again, Samet Yigitolu fouled out. SMU just did not have an answer on the offensive side for what Syracuse was doing down the stretch. And, part of that was Samet Yigitolu. I mean, he was, 5 for 5 from the field when he fouled out and had 11 points on the day. And SMU just didn't get anything from the front court really after that. In a sense, the guard play really made some bad decisions. Boobie Miller forced his final shot. But that game, just the inability to get a basket down the stretch for SMU cost them, and a couple missed free throws as well. So Syracuse was able to get a win. They come into Cameron Indoor Monday night, 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. You guys catch that one there. That's a matchup that for Duke, as they are looking, I don't want to say are looking ahead. They have ahead of them a matchup against Michigan, on next Saturday in another high-profile matchup. This is going to be a team that is going to have to lock it down with the Syracuse team, because they showed that they are dangerous. They are capable of finding a way to get some of these wins across the table. But when you see the Syracuse offense find a way with Kai and Anthony out there, it's just kind of funny to watch it all unfold like that, because just so much heat up there on that program, and just kind of watching some of the lead up to that game. I mean, you really would have thought that they were on the verge of firing Adrian Autry, and but they sit at 6-7 now in ACC play, and so not really terrible as they sit right smack dab in the middle of the league. So that is a fun Monday night matchup. We go back to Saturday though, and you see Virginia take down Ohio State 70-66. Ohio State 16-9 on the year, not an incredible team by any means, but certainly one that is in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten. But UVA was able to get this one done, and even though Bruce Thornton went off for 28 for Ohio State, Virginia just using that defensive ability and balanced scoring to get this one done. Malik Thomas had 13 points. Chance Mallory had 12. Sam Lewis had 12. They got a lot of contributions across the board, but only shot 33% from 3-point range. They really kind of kept Ohio State in this, felt like, with some of the turnovers that they had in this matchup. But Virginia improves to 22-3 on the year. They're 15th. We'll see what happens when the AP poll comes out. But a really quality win for Virginia here, and one that I think continues to show just how good this league is, because then you flip over and you see what Louisville did to Baylor, getting a double-digit win in a neutral site game over the Bears, and they're not any good this year. It's 13-12 as a whole, but Louisville gets another 29 points from Michael Brown. Just an outstanding performance from him as a freshman, as one of the top young players in the ACC, and I think you've just got to give him a lot of credit for how he's bounced back from that injury. He averaged 37 points per game over the last 2 games, 5.5 rebounds a game, 4 assists, 4 steals, just incredible. Perfect 16 of 16 from the free throw line. And now Louisville heads to Moody Coliseum Tuesday night in a 6 p.m. matchup. That is a massive one for SMU after seeing them, fall to Syracuse. I don't want to say they don't have any room for error, but that was a game that, in terms of the NCAA tournament, SMU still in it, but that was a game that for SMU, you did not want to see them lose. And they dropped 2 spots in the net to 36. They're projected to make the NCAA tournament by most everybody, including On3, but we're still seeing this SMU team, kind of have those ups and downs and not closing out games. And yeah, they're 3-2 in 1 possession games this year, but you're seeing them as of late here against NC State and against Syracuse, faltering down the stretch and not getting it done. So they've got to get back on the right side of things if they're going to really improve their seeding, in a sense, for the NCAA tournament. And, if you're SMU, you don't want to start spiraling in a sense and, losing other games that you quote unquote shouldn't. They've got a West Coast trip here coming up, I believe next week. So they'll face Louisville at home this week. They'll face Boston College on Saturday. And then they go at Cal, at Stanford. then they host Miami, then they go at Florida State. So there are some sneaky tests in there. Obviously, SMU was able to get by Florida State earlier this year, barely, but that one looms large. They really have to win the games they should down this stretch. And I tell you what, though, if they got this win over Louisville, you really feel like they'd be in. That would give you the hope. They beat Boston College, they beat Florida State, they split out there in California, and then toss the ball up against Miami and see you're looking at this SMU team that could be very much in the NCAA tournament in a safe way with a win over Louisville. But Louisville is playing really good basketball right now. It's going to be a tough game. Michael Brown certainly feeling it, and now remains in Dallas. I don't think they flew back after their matchup on Saturday, but Tuesday night SMU takes on Louisville. That'll be a fun one to watch in Moody Coliseum. Looking back on Saturday as well, Pitt at North Carolina, UNC 79, Pitt 65. UNC, I think for them, the big storylines were off the court. And by off the court, I mean, Caleb Wilson injuring his hand in that loss against Miami. It was a hand fracture. No timeline for his return has been announced yet. But Dick Vitale was on the call during the Clemson Duke game, and here's what he said about this. And I feel so bad for Caleb Wilson and all the Tar Heel fans. He's probably done for the year. They don't know that for sure yet. So something to keep an eye on there. That would be really, really devastating for the Heels, I think, in the long term as a whole, with his 19.8 points per game, his 9.4 rebounds per game. Caleb Wilson's a star. Henry Visar, I believe, was out for this one as well. I saw a tweet right before the game, and I didn't get a chance to watch this one, but one that that is not. Yeah, he didn't end up playing. So for UNC to get this one done, even though Pitt's 2-11 in league play, they're 9-17 overall. Really good job by them to get this one across the finish line. Seth Trimble, 19 points. Jaron Stevenson, 19 points on the day to lead the Tar Heels. But the concern lies, of course, with Caleb Wilson, but Henry Visar and his injury. What does that look like as not a player that you could have seen them missing coming off of that loss of Miami as well. That was one that Caleb Wilson was asked about in post game, but Henry Visar was one that kind of came out of nowhere. So will he get back into the lineup here soon for UNC is a good question to keep an eye on as well, because right now Caleb Wilson's out for a while, and that will really hurt UNC as a whole down the stretch, as they do have another matchup against Duke, and then they before that they've got at NC State this week, at Syracuse, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Clemson. It's a tough road, and if you don't have Caleb Wilson for sure, you're going to need Henry Visar. So maybe a day of rest does him some good, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that. I'm sure it'll be asked about on Monday's ACC Coaches Teleconference. Before we finish up here with the rest of the Saturday recap, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at Sportsmo as well. This is big. Sportsmo just announced this, that you can bet your friends head-to-head. So here's how it works. You load your wallet on the Sportsmo app. That money that you've pledged to your favorite university that you want to support goes into your account. You can use it to bet on points or win, loss, whatever. And if it hits, it goes right to your school, and you support your school's student athletes benefit fund. Guess what? You can now say to your friend, hey, I'll bet you, let's say, here we go, SMU Louisville, your Louisville friend, and you're an SMU friend. Hey, I bet you that SMU beats Louisville. If SMU beats Louisville, your friend, however much you bet him, will then take that money out of what he's pledged to Louisville's student athlete benefit fund. And if SMU wins, it'd go to SMU's, and vice versa. So if Louisville wins on Tuesday, that SMU friend who uploaded $50 to his wallet and it was a $50 wager, you see that money go from SMU to Louisville. So you can literally bet against opposing fans and have it go either right to your favorite, your favorite college team, or you could lose it. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic there, but it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like a good old fashioned mayor's bet between two sides. Like, I'm going to send you box of our famous whatever if we lose. But if we win, you got to send me a box of your favorite and famous city perks, what have you. So check out our friends at Sportsmo today and learn more about how you can impact your favorite college team's roster today.
College basketball hits different with Sportsmo. You tap, they score. You pledge, they drop a three. At this point, you're not watching a game, you're in it. Download Sportsmo, power the play.
That's right. Download Sportsmo and power the play. Georgia Tech did fall at Notre Dame 89-74. Irish beating up on Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech is a team that you've got to be circling here as a potential coaching change. 11-15 overall. It's not in good shape over there in Atlanta, and Ryan Alpert's taken over there as AD. So something to keep an eye on with some of all the changes in investment going on in Atlanta that I think could be next as far as one of the schools to keep an eye on with the coaching carousel. Cal went out to Boston College and came away with an 86-75 win. Nice win for Cal here. Yes, it is BC, but we also know what the true coast-to-coast travel does to some of these teams in ACC play. Cal improves to 18-8, 6-7 in league play. They get this win with Chris Bell lighting it up with 6 3-pointers on the afternoon. And BC falls to 9-16 overall, 2-10 in league play. Florida State at Virginia Tech went up and grabbed an impressive 92-69 win over Virginia Tech. There is no, I would say, more dangerous team right now in the ACC than Florida State relative to where they are. Maybe you could argue a little bit Miami and what they've been able to do, but also a team that in the state of Florida is really making some noise down the stretch here. 12-13 now overall, 5-7 in league play. They've really bounced back from the cellar. You're seeing what Martin Somerville and Robert McCray and them are doing for this Florida State team. Just impressive stuff. To light it up in the second half the way they did, both on the offensive and defensive end of the floor. FSU outscored Virginia Tech 53-27 in the second half and just blew the doors off of Virginia Tech. A really, really disappointing loss for Virginia Tech. Drops to 17-9 overall, 6-7 in league play. And you're seeing this Florida State team just start to click, start to come together. So keep an eye on them going into the back stretch here. They've got Boston College at home. They go at Clemson. They play Miami. They face Georgia Tech, Pitt, SMU. It's not out of the realm of possibility for them to easily go 4-2 in that stretch. And we'll see kind of what happens there and just the way they could finish down the stretch, flying up the ranks maybe and making some noise in the ACC tournament. So kudos to Florida State for a really nice road win on Saturday. Meanwhile, we talked about SMU and Q's, but Stanford also accompanying Cal on their East Coast swing as they go at Wake Forest and lose 68-63. This is the type of game that can happen when you go coast to coast, as Wake improves to just 13-12 overall, 4-8 in league play. Stanford drops to 16-10 and 5-8 in league play, as Okorie, another 26 points to lead all scorers. But Juke Harris delivered 25 points in the win. Two teams that are sitting on the outside of the NCAA tournament and trying to find a way to make a move, but not looking likely that it'll happen right now. So finally, I would say, game that probably didn't get enough attention really, but Miami beats NC State on the road 77-76, and Will Wade calling his team soft after the game. I can tell you what, having covered Will Wade, he always tells it like it is. And for him to throw around the soft word, not great. NC State drops to 18-8 overall, 9-4 in league play. Miami improves to 20-5 and 9-3 in league play. Jay Lucas' first year as a head coach, man, he's getting the most out of the Canes here down the stretch, as Malik Reneau led all scorers with 26 points. Lubin had 17 for NC State, but man, the story continues to be these Miami Hurricanes and what they're doing in the basketball side of things now. They face Virginia Tech at home this week on Tuesday night, I believe. Today is the 16th. So, yes, Tuesday night. Then they go at Virginia. then at Florida State, then Boston College, SMU, Louisville. So some really tough tests here. That's what we were saying, kind of entering the meat of this schedule. And they came out on this stretch that they're on. I mean, they've won 5 of their last 6. Really, really good spot for the Canes to be in, and they are skyrocketing up the rankings of this league, and of course, making a move into the NCAA tournament with their push. They're currently projected as a 9 seed in the South region, which is Houston. They'd face Indiana in Oklahoma City in the first round. SMU continues to sit in the 9 seed mark in the West region this time, with San Jose facing Iowa in San Diego. Of course, we have North Carolina still in the mix as a 6 seed. They'd face the winner of Ohio State, UCF in the Midwest region out of Chicago by way of Tampa. It's always funny when some of these tournament cities and how they pop up. Duke sitting on the 1 seed line. They'd face LIU or NJIT. I don't even know where. I guess maybe New Jersey Institute of Trenton, but probably have that wrong. Out of Greenville, though, by way of the East region in Washington. So a lot of really impressive NCAA tournament teams right now for this ACC, and we are looking forward to following it down the stretch, as this will be a just fascinating ACC tournament. I really think there's a bunch of teams that can give everybody a game on any given night and really get hot and make a run in this tournament. So something to keep an eye on as we get into the late stretch of conference play. And as we're pretty much a month away from the ACC tournament getting going on the basketball side of things. And look, while that is all well and good, we're always going to talk football on All Access AM as well. And we've got a really good friend of the show who has just joined the studio, and he is now covering Miami 4-on-3 at Kane Sport, and that's EJ Holland. EJ, welcome to the show. Good to see you, my friend.
What's up, Billy? How's it going?
It's going great, man. Going great. So tell us a little bit about Kane Sport, your role moving into this Miami market, and what fans can expect.
Yeah, no, for sure. The transition's been awesome. Moving over from covering Michigan to Miami, a little bit different, but I'm excited to cover Miami. I think it's the best program to be covering right now when you look at what they're doing in the transfer portal, what they're doing NIL-wise, what they're doing with recruiting. They're checking every box, and they're kind of setting the standard in this new era of college football. I think Miami, you saw the run of the national championship this year. I think they've kind of, set themselves up to have long-term success with the way they're approaching things in all those phases. And, covering Miami, I'm going to be, moving down to Florida. So I'm excited about that. I know you're a Florida native, Billy. So excited to get down to Florida. Miami obviously has a ton of backyard talent from a recruiting perspective, but they've taken a more national approach as well. It's kind of crazy seeing how many national guys Miami is in the mix for to go along with, the hotbed of talent that they have in their own backyard. So obviously I'll be covering recruiting, and the transfer portal is so big in this era. So excited to see, what Miami continues to do there. I'll be covering it all over at canesport.com, but just really excited. I was on Michigan for 6 years, just felt like it was time for a change, and, Miami's a great fit for me. So I'm super excited about the role.
As you jump into Miami, and I know these things behind the scenes for all of us are set in stone usually long before, so you probably got to watch Miami pretty closely on the transfer portal. What were a couple of key positions that really impressed you as far as what Miami accomplished in the transfer portal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the headliner was Darian Mensah, and that whole situation was kind of crazy just with the lawsuit and everything. But I think Miami's done a great job, obviously, of landing quarterbacks out of the portal. You had Cam Ward, Carson Beck. Now you have Darian Mensah, who will be one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football next year. So he's kind of leading an offense that is revamped a little bit and also brings back some key weapons. You look at the guys they surrounded him with out of the portal. They went, kind of wide receiver heavy. They landed his teammate Cooper Barkate, who will be obviously an instant impact player. There's already chemistry there. So, those two are going to link up early and often. They added a big time vertical threat and Vandravius Jacobs, another productive wide receiver in Cam Vaughn out of West Virginia. So, they added some really nice pieces on the offensive side of the ball. And that's not to mention the guys they have coming back, Mark Fletcher, one of the best running backs in the country. And then obviously the most explosive guy in the country, Malachi Toney. So you put all those transfer pieces together. You have Toney, you have Fletcher, you have Alex Mirabal coaching the offensive line. This offense is going to be dangerous and one of the best in the country. And, Miami always takes care of the defensive side of the ball as well. They added some key pieces like Damon Wilson, an edge transfer from Mizzou. I believe he was third in the SEC in sacks last year. Keona Davis, defensive line transfer from Nebraska, will get in the rotation. Omar Thornton from Boston College will be an impact player in the secondary. So again, the Canes just reload, whether it's recruiting, whether it's portal. Again, I think they're set up for long-term success.
I think Darian Mensah is obviously there's all the off-field stuff, which we're not going to get into. It's all settled. He's there. But what he's been able to do the last couple of years, just I think building from that Tulane spot to what he did at Duke in this past year and the top returning passer now in the ACC, going to be headed to Miami and getting into the mix right away in spring. Carson Beck sat out last year in terms of spring. He was recovering from injury, but he was on campus. He was able to kind of go through things with the guys and learn the offense. Darian Mensah has that opportunity to get right to work. And for Darian, having 2 years of eligibility is great. We'll see if Miami, ultimately keeps him from the draft after next year. But he is certainly one that I think is going to be obviously in the Heisman Trophy discussion. But people are going to learn a little bit more about this wide receiver core for Miami this year, because even though Malachi Toney's explosive, even though we saw what CJ Daniels could do in that offense, I still don't think the playmakers at Miami are talked about nationally enough and what they do for their quarterbacks. Malachi Toney in year 2, Cooper Barkate, this offense is just really going to be dangerous. And I think in part because you have all that time in the spring to get acclimated.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think anytime you bring in new pieces, especially from the portal, it's not like recruiting where guys come in as freshmen, they're part of a class, they get to kind of develop together and go through strength and conditioning workouts and practices together for multiple years. These guys are plug and play, and spring will be so pivotal for them, just picking up the playbook, getting used to being a Miami Hurricane, getting acclimated with each other. I mean, the good thing, like I mentioned, is Darian Mensah and Cooper Barkate played together last year at Duke. So that chemistry is already there. I don't think it'll be hard for Mensah to build up some chemistry with Malachi Toney. And then Mark Fletcher, I covered him as a recruit, even though I wasn't on the Miami beat, but he is a fantastic kid. And I think everybody around Miami will tell you how high character or how much character he has and how much of a leader he is. And I think he can get some guys, going pretty quickly as well, just from a leadership perspective. And it takes some pressure off of Mensah as well, just having such a great offensive line and such a battering back in Fletcher. I'm excited to see what Mensah looks like. Like you said, he should be in the Heisman Trophy running when it's all said and done. But yeah, I think all these guys will have an opportunity to gel quickly. I think the culture at Miami is really high under Mario Cristobal. So, sky's the limit for Miami this year and moving forward.
When you look at the top 10 recruiting class and how it came together, the headliner, number 1 overall prospect on the Rivals industry ranking, Jackson Cantwell. This was a commitment that came fairly early, I would say, in a sense. We're seeing guys commit earlier and earlier, but Miami went toe-to-toe with the nation's best. They ultimately get him. What does this addition with Francis Mauigoa out the door, Markel Bell out the door, what does that mean for this Miami offensive line and the expectations that he's got going into the season?
Yeah, I think you don't often see true freshman offensive linemen make an impact that often, but you have seen it at Miami. You mentioned Francis. So I think Jackson Cantwell will have an opportunity to come in and potentially start right away. I mean, he's an elite talent. Obviously, the number one offensive tackle in the country, number one overall prospect in the country per the industry ranking. But he has a massive frame. I mean, 6'7.5", 325 pounds. He's a true towering tackle prospect. He's a guy who is extremely dominant in the run game. Usually when you have those tall tackles, they can struggle to bend and get low and finish off blocks in the run game, especially early on in their career. Not Jackson Cantwell. He's extremely athletic. He has a great background. His parents were Olympians. He's one of the best shot putters in the nation. So he's a guy who you can see that athleticism transfer from tape, to the field right away here at Miami. So he's a guy, again, that's super dominant in the run game. He needs to kind of polish up a little bit as a pass protector, just because at the high school level, he played in a predominantly run heavy offense. But under Alex Mirabal, who's, again, one of the best offensive line coaches in the country and a fantastic teacher. I mean, everybody I've spoken to in my first couple of weeks on the Miami beat just talks about how great of a developer Alex Mirabal is. And you saw the dominant play from the offensive line at Miami this year. So I think Cantwell getting there early, getting a chance to develop this winter and going into spring, I think he'll have a chance to compete for a starting spot, as a true freshman. And again, he just checks a lot of boxes. Obviously, when you bring in the number one player in the country, you have high expectations. So, and it's crazy. I just got back from the Rivals camp in Miami, and the Hurricanes are in the mix for Mark Matthews, who's the number one offensive tackle in 2027. So the Hurricanes are really looking to build that offensive line first and win in the trenches, just like they did this past season. We talked about the exciting lands of Darian Mensah and Cooper Barcade, and everybody knows Malachi Toney, but Miami's done a great job of fortifying the offensive line, adding that top tier talent, across the trenches. And if they can land Matthews next cycle to go along with Jackson Cantwell, man, this wall of an offensive line will be set up for many years.
And defensively, Corey Heatherman he came in year one and just completely changed the mindset of that defense. And obviously it helps to have stars like Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor and Keontae Scott and some of these other players. But, so much of this Miami team, I think their swagger, their confidence really came from this defense and their ability to kind of set the tone and be game wreckers and all of those things. You add Keona Davis, you add Damon Wilson, Omar Thornton, another ACC on ACC crime there, coming over to the program. I think this defense in year two, with their ability to pick up the terminology and add more to it now, there's going to be a lot of fun had by Corey Heatherman, I think, this year. They do have some major pieces they've got to replace, but we know Miami's recruiting at a high level too on the defense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, defensively, you look at what they did in the recruiting class, again, focusing in on the trenches. You saw what Mesidor and Bain were able to do this past year. They added Ashari Charles, who's a little bit of, a shorter edge, which is completely fine. Miami obviously had a lot of success with the guys I mentioned. He was a late riser who burst into the top 100. They had a flip from Keyshawn Stansel. It's another, defensive lineman who can play across the front. So a lot to like about some of the guys they landed along the defensive line. They had a big win. James Dunnigan out in Kansas, who's a top 150 safety. So I think when you look at what Miami is trying to do defensively under Corey Heatherman, they're trying to, get guys who are aggressive, great culture fits, who just play with tenacity and a relentless motor. And I think you have a lot of those guys in this recruiting class. You have some of those guys in the portal. I thought the job Heatherman did was, arguably the best in college football. He was obviously a finalist for the Broyles Award, maybe should have won that award. He's, fantastic. Those two guys, man, Alex Mirabal, Corey Heatherman, those two assistants are, again, among the best in the country and so valuable for Mario Cristobal's staff. And I think when you're landing the talent that Miami is landing and you couple that with elite coaching and development from your defensive coordinator and your offensive line coach, again, sustained success at Miami, there's no question it's going to happen.
Let's look ahead a little bit in the future of Miami and their recruiting efforts to continue to bring players like Malachi Tony in and some of these homegrown guys. What's the temperature down there as far as Miami, the city, and how difficult it is and how competitive it is? Or are we seeing the fruits of that labor for Miami, the program investing and making that national championship game? Are you already starting to see that wheel really turn now that they've taken that step from, okay, we see the talent, we see the infrastructure and investment. Even last year we didn't see it come to fruition with Cam Ward. Now that they've gone all the way to the national title game, you see in Miami that fence get more constructed and even more sturdier down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miami now is very well positioned to keep their top talent at home. I mentioned Mark Matthews, again, the number one offensive tackle in the country, the number two overall recruit. I think he has an argument for the number one overall recruit nationally. So, he's at St. Thomas Aquinas, and, that school is obviously always loaded with top tier talent. Talking to Matthews yesterday, you can just see the excitement when you bring up the Hurricanes and Alex Mirabal and what they did along the offensive line. And so I think Miami's the early leader there. The Rivals recruiting prediction machine certainly reflects that. And I think Miami's in-state recruiting starts with Mark Matthews. But aside from Matthews, I mean, they already have 3 in-state guys committed, including Amari Stevens, who's a Rivals 300 wide receiver, electric, has verified track times. I think they're working their way around the state. Guys like Caden Henderson, who's one of the top linebackers nationally. He told me when I spoke to him last month, he was like, hey, man, I wasn't super high on Miami, but what they did this season, what Corey Heatherman did with the defense, I mean, Miami's vaulted themselves back into that top group. So, yeah, I mean, across the state, not just in South Florida, I think a lot of these in-state prospects aren't just taking notice of Miami. They're really buying in to what Miami's building. I think they're going to have a lot of these guys on campus. But I think the important thing to note with Miami is, yeah, you have that hotbed of talent. It's always going to be important to keep homegrown talent. But the way Miami has recruited nationally has been extremely impressive. I mean, you look at the 26 class, you went out to Missouri to land Cantwell. One of your top 100 lands, Gavin Mueller, was from Illinois. We talked about James Dunnigan, who's from Kansas. I mean, the national footprint that Miami is building in this new era of NIL, where they're able to go out and just get the best players regardless of where they're from, is extremely impressive. So again, I think that's another big reason why Miami is so well positioned for the future. When you have that amount of talent in your own backyard and you're also able to go out nationally and recruit the best of the best, Miami's going to win in the portal every year, but they're also going to win on the recruiting trail every year.
You have a list of biggest needs in this 2027 class for Miami and what they need to go out and attack when it comes to building this roster for next, the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, Miami's always going to put a premium on the trenches. So I think, continuing to bolster the offense and defensive line will be big. I think linebacker is definitely a position they need to attack. I mentioned Caden Henderson up in the Tampa area. He's a top target. Noah Glover is a Rivals 300 linebacker out here in Virginia, who Corey Heatherman saw twice during the winter contact period. Continuing to build the secondary as well will be key. They're in it with several top targets on the back end. Obviously, they just lost their corners coach in Zach Etheridge, so it'll be interesting to see who Miami replaces there. But they're in it with several guys on the back end, including the number one corner in the country, Joshua Dobson, who received a visit during the winter contact period. So again, I think it starts from the trenches out. I think Miami's always going to be able to supplement their recruiting with the transfer portal wins. And we talked about the guys they added, at quarterback, at wide receiver. So, those positions are still valuable. Miami's still going to take a high school quarterback every class, but with what they've been able to do in the portal, I'm not really concerned about Miami's quarterback recruiting moving forward, or even really their wide receiver recruiting moving forward. I mean, again, they're able to get guys out of the portal. They're able to win guys that are close to home. You go to Florida to get wide receivers. And so Miami's going to continue to do that on the recruiting trail. But yeah, I would say linebackers, secondary, and just continuing to build those trenches are key for the 2027 recruiting class.
EJ Holland, we appreciate the time, my friend. Thanks for stopping by All Access AM, breaking it all down on Miami.
Yeah, appreciate it, Billy. Everybody who's watching that's a Miami fan, make sure to go over to canesport.com, hit that subscribe button, and go Canes.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate EJ Holland for stopping by. He is the man on the Miami recruiting, transfer portal, all that intel you can get over at canesport.com, part of the On3 and Rivals network. Appreciate EJ. Again, EJ gave me my start in this industry, so always love circling back with him, and we get to do more of that. We've kind of been in different conferences. Now I'm covering SMU, EJ's covering Miami, and we bring you all the ACC news we can on All Access AM. So please hit our subscribe button as well for us on YouTube and help us grow the channel. Speaking of helping you grow your next event into an unforgettable experience with our friends at Corporate Magic. And Corporate Magic delivers on a stage that you cannot imagine. The amount of work and timing and energy that they put into their live events. There's only a few companies in the world that can do it like Corporate Magic. And you've probably seen some of their events without even knowing it, whether it be massive national sales meetings to concerts to content pieces. Corporate Magic can make it all happen for you because they bring decades of experience to every project, combining planning, design, and technology to keep your audiences fully engaged. So make sure you go to corporatemagic.com. And then when you reach out to them in chat, tell them All Access AM sent you. That's corporatemagic.com to learn more. All right, moving on All Access AM. We do have a couple more items here to close out the show with. And one of those pieces is North Carolina did sign a transfer quarterback. And that is transfer quarterback Teron Dickens. I don't know why I said it like that, but Teron Dickens is now headed to North Carolina by way of Western Carolina. He spent 3 years with the program and is now transferring. He threw for 3,500 yards, 38 touchdowns, 2 interceptions last season, 74% completion percentage. He had 321 rushing yards and a touchdown. This is a really sneaky ad. Now, Teron Dickens can compete with Wisconsin quarterback Billy Edwards and Texas A&M transfer Miles O'Neill for the starting quarterback job over there in Chapel Hill for Chapel Bill, as Bobby Petrino comes into the mix. So Bobby Petrino must have gotten there and said, hey, we need one more type of player to add into this program that went, not so good in year one in Chapel Hill. And, year two, what they're doing as far as investing in the high school recruiting and trying to get it done in transfer portal as well. They're trying to figure out their quarterback situation. If North Carolina can hit on that, that's certainly a game-changing piece there as we watch this program try to take the next step under Bill Belichick. But he was the runner-up for the Walter Payton Award given to the National Offensive Player of the Year in FCS. That's Teron Dickens. So a really impressive player here who brings a little bit of that dual threat ability for North Carolina. And look, Bobby Petrino has kind of added that into the offense a little bit more in some of his previous stops. Taylon Green was really good at Arkansas. So now he gets Teron Dickens and what they're going to bring with him. And just his overall productiveness is really, really impressive. So that was a major piece that North Carolina added into the fold here late, and they get that done. So kudos to them for continuing to add to the quarterback position, as it is never a place that you should stay. I think stay content with. You always want to be adding at the quarterback position, and North Carolina did that. Close out with a couple other thoughts here. Mike Norvell did an interview with On3 this week, and that article has now come out, and our friend Pete Nakos did it. But one thing that Mike Norvell said in it, and I think it's obviously funny, is like, yeah, okay, thanks for doing your job. But he said, quote, "I've put my head down and gone to work. That's what I've done. I've done that regardless. In years past, where there've been talks of other opportunities, you stay focused on what you're doing. You stay focused on the job that's at hand. You're trying to be the best you can be." They did add John Garrett as their general manager and Taylor Edwards from, I believe, Miami. I think he came up from Miami. Maybe it was John Garrett from Miami. Maybe it was both. But added Taylor Edwards as their director of football and player acquisition. He's working with them to build this Florida State roster for the future. And Florida State, I think, has now flipped the switch into that, hey, we're going to hire people that build rosters kind of mentality versus, all right, we're going to leave it up to the head coach. And this is obviously a make or break year for Mike Norvell. If this comes together for Florida State, great. They've added Ashton Daniels. He impressed with Mike Norvell's play calling. Defense found its groove, make a bowl game, maybe even win it, maybe get back on track in that way. And then you can see them, okay, we've maybe found our little bit of formula here that we're trying to put together. It's not perfect yet. It's not refined. It's not ready to go to retail, but they're trying to see what works best. And deep down, like for me, I see Mike Norvell as a good football coach. I think now in this day and age of roster building and general managers and scouting departments and all of this stuff, you can't just leave it to, I think, a head coach's feel. And there are very few that you could. But Mike Norvell, for example, has not done well at the quarterback position, whether it be kind of missing an eval completely in like a DJ Uiagalelei, or Tommy Castellanos, maybe the mental, maybe the team component of it. I'm just going to say it. That has kind of been where Tommy has clearly, I think, from an outsider perspective, left something to be desired at times. Maybe it's his competitiveness. Maybe he's got that juice and it just comes out in those ways that it has. But Mike Norvell, I think, had to give up something in that regard. And the player acquisition and really looking at the roster piece is probably that area that Florida State said, hey, we can make some changes and invest in this, and it can pay off in a big way. And here's the thing. Those two additions, John Garrett and Taylor Edwards, I believe, signed multi-year deals. So they're in it for the long run here. So now they can say, okay, all right, we're jettisoning some of the roster that has led to the downturn of Florida State. And we're going to bring in new pieces, and we're going to see if it works. And we're going to take an additional look at the quarterback position. And we're not going to go with some big name player. People are like, who? Ashton Daniels? Well, lucky for you guys, I watched a lot of Ashton Daniels, and he has some ability, some juice to him. And we're kind of high on what he can do in this offense this year because he's been in situations that are poor. Now, Florida State, I think, from a purely offensive mindset standpoint, and at least the baseline level of playmakers around him is going to be in good shape. I think Auburn was a mess. Yeah, you could say Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, all that stuff. They were just a mess. Florida State, I do feel like offensively, is not coming into this season as a complete and total mess. They have some things that have worked for them in the past that they're going to try to accomplish. Ashton Daniels, I think, has an opportunity to do that and do that as a high level. Quote from Mike Norvell: "You saw a quarterback who was a great playmaker, was extremely productive in the handful of games he was able to play. I saw the growth in him and the belief with the full season here in front of him, full off season. Really excited about what he brings." So I think Mike Norvell taking a different approach, and that whole staff at the quarterback position, could pay dividends. But if you haven't seen that interview with Pete Nakos of On3, check it out at on3.com. You can pick your favorite team once you subscribe over there. We appreciate Pete and all the work he does grinding for us at On3 and just putting all of that together. So let's close out with this. We'll hop back over to ACC basketball real quick, run you guys down. Monday night, we talked about Syracuse facing Duke. Syracuse fresh off that win over over SMU on Saturday. Woof. And they get after it 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Tuesday night slate, Boston College at Florida State at 5 p.m. Central Time on ACC Network. North Carolina at NC State, 6 p.m. ESPN. Louisville at SMU, 6 p.m. on ESPN2, and Virginia Tech at Miami, 7 p.m. on ACC Network. So hope you guys tune into all those. We'll be back Wednesday, again, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time on All Access AM. Break it all down for you guys. We'll probably do some more bracketology and more. So thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate EJ Holland for stopping by with his time, and we will catch you guys next time on another edition of All Access AM. See you Wednesday. Thanks for watching.